Now, James will offer us a global perspective about the assessment of the road infrastructure, and we will take some elements about the motorcycles as vulnerable road users. So, James, please.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. So, for those who haven't heard of iRAP or our European wing of EuroRAP, what we are is very similar to Euro NCAP, except for where Euro NCAP look at the vehicle and say, how does it contribute to protecting you in the event of a crash? We look at the road design and we say, how does the road design influence the likelihood of you having a crash, and what level of protection does it provide you in the event of the crash? So both two different angles there. One is reducing the chance of a rider or a vehicle occupant making a mistake, but also when they do make mistakes, how does the road protect them to make sure that severity crash is as low as possible? We've got two different ways that we make available for people to use around the world. One of those is crash risk mapping, so that's just motorcycles only in some countries. Before anybody actually has a crash on it, and looking at all those different road features and how they play together to influence that risk. And on this, typically we're most well known for our vehicle occupants star ratings, so that's things like cars and light goods vehicles. But it's also worth knowing that we also have motorcyclists as their own user group in there and their own distinct star rating, as well as bicyclists and pedestrians. So here's some examples from around the world. So where do these tools fit into the road life cycle? Because this is the biggest challenge we have with roads, is it has a long, long life cycle. You build a road and it's there for decades. And so what we've got is our crash risk mapping, very much looks at while you're maintaining the road and whilst it's opening and you're planning what to do next on your road. Whereas our star ratings actually go all the way from once you're building the road, saying, am I opening the thing? Has it been built correctly? All the way around to planning and what can I do differently in terms of getting my network right. In addition to the star rating, which is your individual road user risk, so it's what's my risk as I ride my motorbike down the road, we also do a fatality estimation, and that's the collective risk. What are all the motorcyclists' risk together on that network? And once you've got that, everybody's risk together, you can then do investment plans. What could we do differently? And what's the economics behind it? You know, what countermeasures can we build? And most importantly, how do we justify that and actually make sure we secure the investment from that, whether it's from private entities or whether it's from central government? We can then take that a step further, and whilst it's in the design process, we can actually bring ourselves up as road designs in line with so many other manufacturing industries and say, how do we make sure we design it right first time? How do we make sure we design it for all road users, that we don't end up with a car-centric road, that actually it thinks about all the users and what the potential is on that road. And actually weaving that also in there with road safety audits. So actually giving them a lot more strength to say, these are the kind of things that you can do, and this is the impact it'll have in terms of fatalities. So where has that data been collected around the world so far? So you can see all these blue lines. This is where the star ratings have been done across the world. Bear in mind that actually iRAP, we don't particularly collect the data. We did in the early days to actually help people understand how to do it. But this is now all being done through suppliers. So this is where a road authority or development bank goes, I want to look at my network, and then they'll actually contract a supplier to go and collect that data and then put it into the free-to-use iRAP tools. So for the majority of these road networks, we'll also have the motorcycle star ratings. So you can start looking at that and saying, well, how are roads performing around the world? Yeah, where are the fatalities happening, or where they will happen in the long run? We've then taken a sample of that data that's really, we've looked into it and make sure it's really strongly valid and put it into what we call the Road Safety Insights Explorer. So this is available on the iRAP website. And I'd encourage you to go and look at that data. It's really, really rich, and you can actually start digging into it and understanding some of the stories of what's going on around the world. You can put all the different filters on it. So where we were talking about earlier about what's the difference between male and female risk, what's the difference between different area types and income levels or different countries. So if this is an example where you can look at some of the other ones where I've actually filtered it down to Spain. You can see the potential crash types that will be likely to be coming out based on relationships that we've seen in other countries and what their effect on the economy would be. Likewise, how the roads that have been assessed in Spain performing, but also the business case. A lot of this comes back to the money. Can we justify spending it, especially in these times at the moment where we've got all these economic crises? Often roads are seen as the one of, well, we'll delay that, we'll do that later on. But actually, if we can turn around and say, well, you're getting a return ratio of 5 to 1, or whatever it might be for your country, suddenly the politicians start listening and going, oh, it's not something we can delay. We can have really fast benefits. So the process we go through is this. But the one I want to really draw attention to today is this stage later on that we've really recently added, which is a user-defined investment plans. And this is where we've built a tool for the road engineers to actually take the model-created investment plans and customize them. Say, okay, so you're suggesting a crash barrier here. Well, actually, I want to put a motorcycle-friendly crash barrier in here or a much wider runoff zone. And they can actually understand the impact of that on their network. So we've developed this with the intention of being very focused at the road engineers. So they can actually dig into that, they can plan their networks, and then they can actually see what kind of impacts that's going to have. So if they say, well, I'm going to put normal wire rope barrier down this road, they can see that it's getting better for the vehicle occupants, but actually they might see that their motorcycle crashes or fatalities go up. And they can start making that decision on a really valid and informed basis. So the other thing I'd like to highlight is within the model, we've actually gone and actually looked at what happens for a motorcyclist and how does it vary compared to a vehicle occupant. Look to the research in there so that straight away you can say, well, for a vehicle occupant, wire rope barrier is probably the best. But actually, for motorcyclists, you're saying concrete barriers are potentially better. And likewise, motorcycle-friendly barriers are even better. Now, that doesn't go the whole hog. You might even then go and say, well, a clear zone as well. And so this is a small sample of this. But this is another area we want to challenge the research industry and say there's so much more we can do. It's not just about analysing vehicle data. Let's look at motorcycles, how they perform. Likewise, let's look at trucks. And especially as our vehicle fleet changes and we're getting much more heavy vehicles and SUVs and electrified vehicles coming along. How are these changing in our countries? And should we be adapting these? So where I wanted to leave you with is, what can you do with the iRAP tools in terms of motorcycles? Well, the very first one is you can use your star ratings for policy. You can actually set a policy level. So this is where we've got our suggested level of 3 stars or better. So that's almost like your minimum base level of safety. And you can then adopt that and put that very much across your whole network. You can then take that a stage further as a road authority, and you can look at which roads do I upgrade first. And this is where the fatality estimation is really strong, because it actually helps you prioritise. So it might say, well, this road here that's 3-star already is a higher priority because you're getting more fatalities on it, but at least it's showing you where that priority is. And then finally, it's the economics behind everything. The ability to really dig into it and say, if I build this road like this, What's the benefit to the economy? Being able to take that to the economists in the country and say, this is why we need to be investing on infrastructure, and this is how it's going to impact the people in the country. So you notice that these are all different languages almost for different audiences, and that's a real benefit of iRAP, as it draws all of those together to allow people to speak to different audiences. Thank you very much.